Just wait. The views expressed in the following show are of the host, the guest, and the callers. The content of the following show, its accuracy, authenticity, and the ramifications of the use or application of said content is the responsibility of those speaking and listening, not the broadcast medium.
Running some Steve.
All right, we are back and we are live. Feet to the fire. We've come to the next segment with Richard Allen Miller, working on the ability to go to and fro between the two. And so, do you hear Richard Allen? Are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. We're doing
Sort
all kinds of experiments here. Kick it in, so there we go. Richard Allen Miller, he is a regular on our show. We love to talk to Richard. He is one of these guys. He's both like, how would you put him? I put him like Doctor Strange, Mr. Wizard, and almost Mr. Rogers together. Where you have this nice
nice day in the neighborhood. Yeah.
So how you doing? How you doing today, Dr. Richard Allen Miller?
Well, you can call me Rick, or you can call me Al. I'm not in my body yet. I'll be there shortly. Give me a minute, and I'm centering in now. I'm burning discs is what I was doing, and you called me right in the middle of burning discs, and so I'm trying to do two things in balance.
Yeah, well,
I'll do it.
Burning discs might be bad for the CPU here. We'll see how things are going.
Shouldn't.
Okay.
My bandwidth CenturyLink, not. This is my old hat. This is one of my originals. I'm having my birthday's coming up. This was the club that I boxed with. Let's see. I guess I have to move it over there. Yeah, Hungao. It's Nepalese meditation cap. Usually, you put sacred geometry on the top of it, and like a dorja or whatever, and then you meditate. It's meditation, and it's from Nepal.
Because one of the things I wanted to do here, having you on the show, is that there's been a lot of questions that popped up along the way, and one of those questions is that hat Masonic?
No, it's not. I am Masonic. I didn't put my talisman on it. My great-great-grandfather's. When you take a break, are we going to take one break? I'll go get it and put it on. And then,
okay. We'll wait and.
Okay, I'm like fifth generation Swiss Mason. My great-grandfather was Rudolf Steiner's lodge master. That's a Blue Lodge in Zurich. They do Waldorf and Montessori. I mentor for a Waldorf right now. I have a 12-year-old doing his doctorate at Cornell in organic chemistry.
Yeah.
Imagine what I could do and mentor something like that. There's my just finished another disc. That kid is still a kid like I am. And so we're co-authoring a comic together. I love writing comics.
What would it be? The adventures of what? The adventures of Dr. Miller?
No, we're going to try to take the position of a microbe in the gut and what it encounters in different parts of the gut in terms of habitat and universes, giving a sense of character to your enteric nervous system and the habitat you currently enjoy as your first brain. It's a kill comic. It's going to be a dark horse press.
Right. Well,
it'll be creepy, like Alien.
Hold on, here we go. We did have a bit of a rough switch over. This is all new to me because I'm doing these various aspects of this system of turning off. And I stopped the stream before I stopped the YouTube, and then there was a trouble and all that stuff, and that's why I was kind of out of it. But we made it. We're live, and here we are broadcasting. Richard Miller is out in Grants Pass, Oregon.
Yep.
And he is, I don't know, he is knows a lot about a lot, and he also knows a real lot about the various items. And so as we go through this, we'll be topping things that pop off the head, and if you have a question, you being ones listening, then you can type them in the chat room. You also could send email at f2f@innersights.com. Chat room is probably the simplest one. If you're watching this on YouTube, I guess you could do it, whether you're on a phone or whether you're at your computer or whatnot. If you're watching this after the switchover, after the fact of the switchover, we'll hope to get that a little smoother. So, I mean, is there something happening right now in your life, in your mind, that you want to get off off your chest right away?
Well, yeah, the last time you and I spoke, it was about Amazon and the fact that I had captured from Amazon Prime copies of my book that were printed the day of the order that did not come from me. Who authorized that? And we talked about that. Today, what I wanted to cover is the gun show that I'm going to do. Actually, it's not a gun show. It's a prepper, RK prepper show in Chicago, March 18th. I think it's 18th and 19th. Is that what I had down? No, it was 18th and 19th. Yes, it's in Chicago. There's detail. I gave you a link. You can do that. Matt Stein and I are going to be there. I'd love to have you turn out because I talk about survival, but you know, I'm going to be coming out of the closet in April as the real Dr. Strange at a major comic convention, and I'm going to start talking about magic as a more advanced form of physics, and I hope to do a little bit of that in Chicago, a preview of what I'm going to do.
Well, you start to scare me when you start talking about magic.
Well, magic with a K is advanced physics with a mystery school. It is the art of changing consciousness at will. If you can do that, you will evolve into another creature. God gave us all these different altered states and tweaking and paranoia, all in here, the white girth and birth. And in Power Tools, I talk about 102 in the ESP book, 102 different body responses related to altered states of consciousness. In other words, we have maybe 102 different ways of subcategorizing one state from another today with, biofeedback and things. And you can do things in these states you can't do in conscious state. For example, hypnosis will put you in a state right about here, and that place, your ability in guessing is 400 times over where you are right here. And with 400 times, imagine being able to slide into that altered state at will to know what you're supposed to do next if you were a Navy SEAL, or that's how we chose SEAL Unit 1, was to measure their ESP. How intuitive were they? And that is a very powerful tool. Imagine if you had a bunch of tools in your toolbox so that you could do things like rip a door off, even in superhuman strength for that one brief moment, or to be able to stop your perception or slow your perception of time down to, that's over here, right here, breathing technique, that you can make your martial arts paranormal by experiencing it as Tai Chi. These altered states are important, and it will be magic that brings that into Western civilization's form of physics.
Now, when we talk about magic, you're not talking about, like, recently we've seen stories about witches casting spells on Bush. That's not your magic, right? I mean,
well, okay. So when I went to the Magic Castle in Hollywood, the owner came up and he said, well, I see you have a lapel on your thing, but it's not my lapel. Are you a magician? And I said, yes. Oh, I don't recognize that club. What club is that? When I said to him, well, you're sleight of hand and I'm sleight of mind. Move up one more dimension in degrees of freedom.
Wow, that's pretty clever. Sleight of hand, sleight of mind.
So if you can move one more stage from sleight of hand and be able to fool people, imagine what you can do with one more dimension. And that's what magic is, and that's basically the control. That all the saints in history have stressed the importance of training the mind. This brain is there to make all your beliefs true. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't believed it. Your gut is your first brain in the switchboard coming from the future. If you can listen to your future instinct, you have 6 things in front of you. That's important. That's your future timeline talking to your conscious present. And what it will do is change literally. That means you have control of your controlled cavitation. I just wrote chapter 7. I just finished chapter 7 on the non-local mind, how to change the movie. And magic is going to play very important in that in chapter 8 when I write about the Casimir effect.
I guess I would just feel a little better not hearing the word magic. But anyway, it's just a semantic thing. We're talking about some of the spiritual stuff. I've
Christianity.
I've done this stuff where I have slowed down time. I mean, I didn't sit there and say, well, I'm going to slow down time now. But I've done this thing where I've cried out no with a deep emotion, and things just slowed down and it prevented an accident, for example. And I don't know exactly what I did. I mean, I didn't like turn on some kind of button thing, but it is something that's inside us. And what
you've done is you went from this conscious waking state into an altered state. And an altered state, do I need to turn my volume down or something? I heard feedback on my side.
No. That was actually my chair squeaking. It just started to do that, which is very aggravating.
I love it, man.
Sorry about that.
No, you're not. That's fine. Cool. If you could do that at will, consciously, so that you played these altered states like you would a toolbox, imagine what you could do next if you could change the movie. You see, consciousness isn't really real. It's a closed system and has limitation. Your eyes, your nose, your so-called senses are not there to see things, to gather data. They're there to filter it. But your body is a far more fine-tuned instrument, taking in a lot of information of which you are not necessarily consciously aware of it. I don't know, I'm watching this Criminal Minds, and they will take somebody that witnessed a crime, and they'll do a light state of hypnosis where your memory picks up detail that your consciousness can't quite remember. I don't remember what the license plate is. Under hypnosis, you might know it. It's spotted it. It's there. What you do is you take the person to the place. In the moment you're glanced at the license plate, what do you see? And they'll come up with a license plate. You have that information, but you have to get at it from one of these other states. And they're all available to you once you've trained the mind to be mindful of the thoughts you choose to entertain. And the fact is that system of slipping, it is the art of changing consciousness at will. So basically, as alchemy led to chemistry, so now physics will become magic. And that's what the Aborigines live by. Hopi, other so-called primitive tribes that are not, they're in better harmony with their environment because they have a different way of accessing it. And some of our ancestors in previous epochs, had technology like space flight, things like that. And they also, like the in the Bible, okay, the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, is relating sound to words. That means that language and sound could be used, like Gabriel, to break or make something happen in space-time. So is dance. That's going to be the Casimir effect. If I talk about Gurdjieff movie, Meetings with Remarkable Men, where they do a cadence, 17, at the end of the dance scene, there are 17 whirling dervish that do a cadence of 3, 6, 9 and change space-time like ghost dance or something like that. You can do paranormal. Those were previous technologies that our other counterparts in previous epochs had as their form of energy. This is the, what do they call it, the sixth epoch. And so we're trial by fire. And that's what the cavitation process is captured, would be electricity, and nuclear energy, and things that we would normally consider air or fire. You know, that fire is like the plasma universe, that kind of thing. So we're going to have a very interesting time as we make this transition in physics. Physics right now is stale. And I don't know of any law in physics that lasts longer than 20 years. Basically, it's antiquated and unable to handle the next level of information that we're going to be. It's not equipped. Quantum mechanics mostly measures everything in space-time. We know that space and time aren't real now, like the future and the past. What we really have is the moment. And you have a closed system where your future is your instincts and your past are your memories. And you have the moment of going from the profane into the sacred by taking that moment and stretching it out. And the more you can do that, that will be our next stage of evolution, being able to live in the moment. That's what Carl Sagan and others had proposed when Alley went through the diamond body and to meet the alien outside of time and space.
Well, living in the moment, the way I think it is when God was asked what his name is, he said, "I am." That's pretty well living in the moment. You know, that the moment now.
Yeah, and if you pronounce the name of God correctly, that was a powerful tool, the Yod He Vahe. And to be able to pronounce the Yod He Vahe correctly, that's what the Book of Formation, or the Sefer Yetzirah, was part of in the Bible. That's previous things that came from Colburn Bibles and other annotated resources. You know, I mean, they were way back.
All right, let me interrupt you for a minute here. Let me interrupt you for a minute for two things. One, I want to comment on my interrupting you. All right, I had a comment got a comment in the chat area underneath the video that I interrupted you too much, and I want to say that there's a purpose here because we have done many talks together, and we just go all over the place. I mean, we start out here, we're there, we're here, we're there. No, that's a fun ride. You know, I like that. But also sometimes I try to keep it back until we finish. You know, we kind of go, oh, let's go back to here and let's go back to here. So that's, and you're not, I mean, you don't take it offense to me.
Oh, I don't. I do it.
Right. I just want to kind of put that out there for the people that and believe me, I have great respect for you. I'm not doing it.
You help me stay focused. I am a functioning savant. I do nod. I do bob. I do drool. I hum to myself. You know, it's interesting. When I was in third grade, I didn't read English. And I didn't read in third grade. And my teacher on the little Ricky is very disruptive. He asks too many questions. Mrs. Reed, interesting, R-E-E-D, in fourth grade kept me after school every night teaching me how to read. And I am so eternally grateful to that woman, because what happened next is a small public library that was next to the grade school I went to, McMicken Heights, in the Highline District of Seattle. Military Road. I read every single science fiction novel that was in that library with a little atom on the spine, including Andre Norton and Isaac Asimov. They were all there. I started reading when I was in fourth grade. And today, I remember every single book. I started with Freddie the Pig detective series and graduated to Mrs. Prickle Goes to Mars. Those are my first books, and I remember them just like everything. She taught me how to read. And then in fifth grade, they thought there was, they started to realize I may be gifted, and they wanted to advance me. And my mother would not let them do that. They wanted to give me lithium. I wouldn't let them do that either. And so I turned out to be socially trained, so that even though I'm a functioning savant, I characteristics that are unacceptable in certain kinds of society. I had one psychiatrist, that he calls him a superb psychiatrist, and he thought that I was schizophrenic, and I laughed inappropriately. He's right. But you know, that's how you tell gifted people. They're the ones that laugh more, because it's a release valve. It does a lot of number of things, including keeping you centered on realizing that none of this is real.
Hit the wrong button there. I have some questions coming in the chat room.
Okay.
Before they scroll off, let me just start at the top and work my way down. What is your take on peyote? Peyote?
When I taught shamanism in 1970 at the University of Washington, I also became first faculty at Evergreen. And I wanted to teach shamanism by actually experiencing it, so that when I taught it, I was able to study it more and actually grow. The textbook I ended up using, we're going to get to peyote. The textbook I used was John Curtis Gowan, Trance, Art, and Creativity, out of Northridge. And that was his first book was The Development of the Psychedelic Individual, which has nothing to do with hallucinogens. And then he talked about the 3 different forms of shamanism. And the first was glossia and automatic writing, and the shaman, that's called prototaxic modes of consciousness. This is in Power Tools in the 8th chapter, and basically can place his consciousness in an animal. That's why a lot of the shaman forms in North America are totemism and animism. That's the closest thing we have to witchcraft in America. And they have a spirit inside an animal that they identify with and can put their consciousness in of the bear, let's say bear is his totem, and be able to see what. Now, the problem is with the prototaxic mode is you have no awareness of how you do that. You just do it. You go on vision quest, you go into the desert for a period of time and a type of solitude, and then, like Christ, and then you emerge with the power, real or assumed, of passing at will into dissociated states of consciousness. That's prototaxic. Parataxic is when you talk about myths and dream time and are able to integrate your dreams in distinguishing the difference between one that's lucid and you actually can work with it, one that's archetypal and a metaphor and can work on larger scales of information. The syntactic modes of consciousness are when you become a saint and use toys like biofeedback to control your autonomic function, training your body to be able to do it consciously. That's one of the things I did with SEALs. You can go into sex magic, where you're using the emotional energy, like Tantra, to punctuate your thought when it goes from psyche into matter.
Yeah.
And then there are the 8 basic states of cosmic consciousness, and they're all different levels of information, and many saints have written about them, and you will find them in the Bordeaux Thedal talking about the roadmap of getting off the wheel and going into higher states of consciousness. I'm writing about that now in the non-local mind book, having to do with being able to change the movie, literally, physically change the movie. In other words, there's no such thing as gravity. The Earth sucks. Just kidding.
So, I mean, is there
but
one of the problems with any type of drug, natural or otherwise, is that you are kind of shortcutting?
Okay, so I sidetracked on peyote, and I'm good. So when I did shamanism, I wanted to know what a real shaman felt. So I went to the Northern Cheyenne, went through the rituals of, and I have an eagle bone whistle that I demonstrate. If I'd known we were going to talk about that, I could bring it up and show you what an eagle bone whistle looks like. Northern Cheyenne, and I was roadman for the Northern Cheyenne and did the 2 first sanctioned peyote rituals in Olala, just south of Olympia. 42 people in the first ritual. There were 70 in the second one. Only 2 people got sick because we did the rituals correctly, and I'll explain that if he wants to get deeper into it. Peyote and the use of the Native American religion is a new religion for the Indians in North America. In Mexico, Huchol and others have, in fact, like Castaneda wrote about, used peyote in ritual as a sacrament. Now, what that did is it led me to take the 28 herbs that are legal highs. That was what was popular back then. And since I assigned rituals to them, like the Native Americans did peyote, it made them legal. And this is the first thing the American Indian did, was form the Native American Church. And it was mostly Canadian bands of Cheyenne coming down into North America, up at the Basin in that area, the Northern Cheyenne. And they started that process where peyote, and now the Ute, the Paiute, all of the different tribes then embraced the peyote, but it was a new thing for sovereignty against the American government. And it worked just like gambling is right now, and gambling casinos. The Indians want maritime law, where they run their systems the way they run them. And you can watch movies about that. The Indians, the Native American, the peyote, was known to be used in Mexico, and that's why the Northern Cheyenne chose to do that ritual way, way back. There is a book called Peyote Music, and it's 1948 with all the songs and dances, and that's where jazz groups like Oregon, Ralph Towner, those guys, will do Witchy Taito, which is the morning song. When the rituals are over, the woman comes in to break the fast, and they eat their first piece of meat to bring themselves back into true. Peyote is a interesting drug. It's different. Mescaline and muscimol are the ones that most people are familiar with in Soma, which was Koryak and the Eskimo forms up near Siberia. That's where it first started. Gordon Wasson did it, and what's his name? Clark, I can't think of his name, that wrote Divine Mushroom, another one. I met him at Berkeley or someplace down there. And those things have always been part of an initiation. You don't do it much because, like, the primary ones, like dimethyltryptamine that you'll find in crabgrass, things of that nature, are basically toxins. And when you take lysergic acid diethylamide, the body freaks out. It goes, toxin just entered the body. And so what it does is it produces a counter to that lysergic acid diethylamide with its own neurotransmitter, jump-starting the brain's learning process of learning how to produce that. And now you have a drug, a neurotransmitter, lysergic acid amide, that's released in the brain as the aha drug. That's when you connect one dot with another. You go, that's what lysergic acid amide does. Dimethyltryptamine is quite different. It's the chill that runs up down your body. That neurotransmitter is N comma N hyphen dimethyltryptamine, not uh, uh, 5 alpha, and that Steve Blake and others used to make down out of Berkeley. The Dimey Church and the ones that use dimethyltryptamine, they call it ayahuasca, are not very spiritual anymore because there's two churches in Brazil that had conflicts with each other. How spiritual can that be? The old Sushol and Huho shamans, Brazil things, they had a different relationship, and it wasn't about who's right. It was about what you did with it in terms of spirituality. Now, when you get these neurotransmitters starting to release them, if you can learn to control them, that's how you change your altered states as a form of magic. And everybody does it differently, and that's why it's called an art form, the art of changing consciousness at will. It's a process. Everybody does it slightly differently, has their own, inner music and the way they relate to body changes in the mind. And
now, if I can ask you, changing consciousness at will, for example, could mean like if you have to, let's say you're out in the wilderness and you have to listen real closely to hear things. So you're going to focus on a audio consciousness. There would be, of course, a spiritual consciousness where you can listen to your gut. Is that what you mean by changing consciousness to be able to use certain aspects of consciousness?
In a crisis situation, you said time slows down. Wouldn't it be nice to have time slow down in your martial arts rather than it only happening when your life's in danger and you're about to hit another car? Or how about the person trapped in that burning car and that woman that comes over and rips the door off to save him and does paranormal strength for one brief moment? That's the kind of gift God gave us. What you can imagine as a Superman, we're all capable of becoming, because that is self-realization. God realization is that which is not knowable. So if you can imagine what God is, being able to fly, being able to rip, flying would be the process that Castaneda talked about by location. It's a form of death, just like astral projection has, where you go fly in a special body to the location and see what's going on with the cord.
Now, I want to interrupt for a second here. Question was in the chat room, so I guess peyote would be worth pursuing for an insight in other realms of consciousness. I want to add that I experimented a little bit with LSD when I was younger, and while I say it would have helped me understand a wider consciousness range, you'd have to be pretty careful.
Disciplined is the key word on that, and that's why magic is more rigorous than even physics in terms of walking that tight and narrow.
But that's why you're talking about a shaman rather than just somebody just doing it on their own, right? You have to have.
Well, yeah, you're going to become your own teacher. I wrote a science fiction story for a short that we made at Evergreen called "Eat the Sun." Then you will be your own father. And it was about taking your autonomic functions and putting them in perfect sync with each other so you knew the unknowable truth. The idea is you are so hallucinating right now that you're confabulating. Like when you talked about listening to sound in the woods, what will happen is if there's no sound, you will still create one. You'll hear music. You will hear something. That's what Amadeus Mozart did. That's what all people do. They will, if in a sensory deprivation tank, if you lose those senses, your mind, the upper mind, this one, will create those sensations for you. Now, that is also a type of magic. It's undisciplined. And what would be nice is if you use those sounds to write music and imagine the genius that occurs then. When you hear the music in your mind, and write it.
When I had that little experimentation for a while with LSD, I remember being able to see with my eyes closed. And what it was as I was walking around the room, the obstacles appeared as a dark red and the open area was black. And so I was able to walk around and not walk into a couch or what have you. And
that's how you see auras. Your mind creates the aura because you've picked up something subconsciously, and what you're trying to do is communicate it to consciousness using one of your senses. That's why it's called clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentient.
But I also want to mention that what ended my little experiments was when I had more than I realized of the LSD. Our band was playing. We were playing in the garage, and I became disconnected to my motor skills. So I wanted to take my guitar and put it in a case. Well, I couldn't do that. What I had to do was I had to go through this. I had to walk around through these stacks. It was a stack of pop. I had to walk around through here, go back to here, come back to here, come back to here, and then I could put it in there. And it was,
I went to met Sally, and she wants to have what that woman's eating.
So my point is though that I don't. Not that you're the doctor, but I don't recommend this stuff because I would think there's more bad that could come with good unless you have training,
like all
tuning.
All different altered states, including consciousness. It creates doors that you open and have access to, and it also closes other doors. Consciousness seemingly is well suited for survival, but if you're in a situation, in a gunfight in Iraq, let's say, your instinct is going to save you. Your logic brain is going to get you killed. You work with instinct. You left the scene, didn't you?
Okay.
There you are.
Yeah.
I don't. No. How did you do that?
I could just disappear like this, right? Ready?
Hey, that's bilocation. That's another thing you can do in altered states. You can be in two places.
We have another question here.
Bet.
What information do you have about dark astral snakes? I just read it.
I don't know what that might imply. There's several ways I could respond to that. When you're dealing with astral, you're a lesser. That's a place of demons. In psychology, they call that the shadow or projection of the shadow. What that means exactly is to see evil in something means that it was also in you at some point so that you could see it. You can't see something in someone that you don't have yourself. A shadow projection of it would be the sun projecting a lesser part of yourself on the ground as a shadow. That's what Jungian psychotherapy would choose to see. And so your shadow or your demons, you talk about the fallen angels. You go back to Solomon the king and the Goetia, or the lesser keys of Solomon, as Golden Dawn Mathers translated that work. You have 72 fallen angels. These were what Raziel gave to Enoch, and is why the Roman Catholic Church took that out of the mainstream Bibles, because if you have the name of the demons, you have control of it. Now, all your exorcisms are oriented toward getting the name of the demon. Once you have that, you have control of it. Okay, so I went back to old Babylonian star maps and made a discovery that the demons that fell from grace were things like, Beelzebub, Ashtaroth, were actually star constellations related to jealousy, rage, greed, anger, the deadly sense, that qualities in man not deemed worthy. We have a number of demons in us because God gave us choice. And that's why I dealt with morals and ethics, because ethics is that an ethical man knows not to cheat on his wife. A moral man won't. And each of us is different in that. And that's why being a magician, an altered state, going to the next level of awareness, uh, comes with responsibilities. And you don't have free will because that would presume you had full disclosure. You don't. You have true will. That's why Crowley called it that. And that is your purpose here on Earth. Whether you do it as intent, what actually happens, or you do it as purpose, why you're really actually here. The two are quite the same. This one right here is what an AI can predict you're going to do 28 minutes before you do it. They started with Jade Helm experiments in the Jade 2.0 software, and now up in the atmosphere they have third generation D-Wave technology. And that machine can go into universes you cannot in the multiverse. It has reserved for machines. Once you start to marry transhumanism, machines with humans, you lose part of feelings. That's a part that makes you superior. Machine doesn't feel pleasure when it beats you at chess. And so that's what makes you human. You have a choice.
Yeah, but I really don't think I don't really think we're going to be able to go into machines. But that's another.
I know, but NASA is saying 2023 will be the marriage of computer chips, where everybody has a barcode. And for me, that's the mark of the beast. 666 separate. That's right. I'm concerned. I would rather remain human and become immortal in a different manner, where I don't give up my emotional EQ. You start with physical plane, that's IQ, and then you move to matriarchal societies like the Bene Jesuits, and you have EQ, which is more information on the physical plane, like how you feel about the physical plane, this thing or that. Then you go to the third level of awareness, would be, these are all specific with neurotransmitters. There are 8 that I use as a type of lever in marking my writings now. So there's a codec. I'm actually writing on another level with which chapter is which. And I started with power tools. And so from now on, you will notice all my books will have 8 chapters. And they will be for earth, air, fire, and water, and the other 2 that I discuss in power tools. Each one of those has a drug, if you will, associated with it, as Timothy Leary work as neurologic circuits. Leary was one of my teachers. I found his filing system of behaviors based on neurotransmitters useful as a way of conveying more information and redundancy. So I'm using that, like Crowley used Liber or his various different LVX, whatever, that to signify what book in what order. And I'm trying to move to another level in my writing because I would like to leave footprints to stimulate the children, the kids, write and go beyond my words. And right now I'm enlightened, at least as much as I can with toys. I learned how to change my perception of time using a didgeridoo, blowing water through a straw and then working with a didgeridoo. And of course, we ended up at Kill Bill with my American Indian flute. That was a technique, and that will allow your boxing, like Quantico, to become paranormal. You can actually do things you can't do in conscious state, but your boxing working in that mode. Like that woman ripped up the door.
A person in the chat room whose nickname is Scowling Wolf said, say thank you. I still have your plant magic book from 25 years ago to you.
Yeah, that book has sold 290,000 copies because what it did is take those 28 herbs out of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act because they're sacraments. And it would seem that dimethyltryptamine in crabgrass is not so much now more a neurotransmitter, but the way God would talk to us using plants. And that's a shamanistic concept, which led to peyote, magic mushrooms, psilocybin, and the rest.
Another question here is: I'm reading them as they come up. Have you have any insights on Saint Francis of Assisi?
things in history. Friends of animals. The reason everybody likes their dog is that it's closer to spirit. They're closer to the reason they're here on earth than we are. They're very simple in that sense of it, and yet very genuine. And that's what I aspire toward, becoming closer to spirit. You see that in the way I am, and you get me, that kind of thing. That's like a dog. They're right there. A Dog Story is a wonderful movie. And I just saw another religious movie that was exceptional. It's called The Shack. And I highly recommend it, like The Dog's Purpose. That was the one that came out last week. And I watched that one. Reincarnated dog. It has conscious volition one time to another, and his purpose on earth. It's an excellent little dog story.
What I'd like to do at this second, just for a second here, is I want to hang up and call you back. There's a slight out of sync I'm noticing before it gets bad. So if you could just, all you got to do is answer.
Hang on.
And I'll call you back. Right, I'm noticing a little syncing issue there. It might not be a big deal to other people. I mean, I could easily watch into it, but I thought I'd get everybody a chance to resync up here. I have a custom-built machine doing this for the broadcast, and it was getting up in the high 70s for its load and all across all 4 cores. So we'll see how it's working. This should be okay now. What is this question here? It didn't happen. It didn't work, huh? Let's try this again.
Are we there?
Yeah, I don't see a picture though.
Back on now.
There we go. All right, here we go.
No matter where you go, there you are.
There you are. Okay. Let's see. Questions. Recently declassified documents state technology can program water with a soldier's mission, and upon completion, their memory is erased. Do you think this is autonomously programming the public? Do you think that, for instance...
Yes, I think the memory water, that's Jerry Pope. Jerry was my lead in 1970 when Boeing laid off 30,000 PhDs in one day. They lost the B-1 contract. They had a big sign in Seattle. The last person out of town, please turn off the lights. And Jerry, the following week, hired me to work in anesthesiology. I didn't work for Jerry. I worked under him. I had higher security clearances at the time because of Boeing. And I was around the corner, the boys from Brazil. Jerry would be there to get me a Bridgeport mill or whatever I needed to make a jig. Jerry has remained my friend all these years, 47. And he has recently written a book called The Fourth Phase of Water because of his intention and interest in water and muscles and how they seem to have body memory and going back to the same place they originally were. The body has memory. It's mostly in structured water. And I just recently wrote on what happens at the moment and the moment just after death with the body of consciousness. And the way I did it was that I quote from my mentor, one of my mentors at Princeton, Sir Roger Penrose, that talks about there is a 3.2 ounce weight loss at the moment of death, like the Egyptians talked about, where they think it's the soul leaving the body. And Penrose's model uses structured water, memory water, in a microtubule that goes back to the multiverse. And that will be the ending of chapter 7 in the non-local mind. The title of that is called Time Travel and the True Nature of Cavitation. And basically, the multiverse is all possible cavitation balls in one moment. And that's pretty much what dreaming does, near-death experiences, astral projection, and meditation processes that would be called soul travel, shove it, and the sound current dealt with in the Upanishads. They talk about it there. where you are renewed each day with 8 hours of sleep and the various kinds of dreams that you do. They have different functions, including repairing the physical body more efficiently, and that's mostly in delta states. But the REM sleep, other things related, is kind of like a near death where you experience alternate universes. And I'm writing about that, how that all is part of the altered states that you can use to do things in those states of consciousness you can't do in the conscious state. Once we start to learn how to do that, whether we're doing it with toys, enhancements, it's risky, that will lead to a new level of physics. And I'm going to guess that that will be called magic. All of your ultra elite of Europe for centuries, were had magical lodges for spiritual development and enlightenment. And I am no different. I belong to OTO. I'm also AA, Order of the Silver Star, a number of blue lodges, some of which I'm a legacy, some of which I sought out for my own initiations. You can do Mary Height and do your own initiation. You don't have to join a Masonic order. Most of the larger bureaucracies, Republican Party comes to mind, have secret lodges inside them. And I have to say something. American Masonry is quite different than Blue Lodge. American Masonry is practiced by the Scottish Rites, and then Shrine, Nile, Temple is more about philanthropy and working with children, whereas Blue Lodges are for enlightenment. Rudolf Steiner felt that children were our most important natural resource, and that agriculture and the relationship of children with agriculture was essential. And that's one of the reasons I'm doing it. Not because I'm following Rudolf Steiner, I'm writing my own books, but I have my own ideas about the importance of children, paying it forward. Children are smarter than we are. They are culturally programmed during our so-called educational process, where they lose something in their gain of knowledge. Remember, Castaneda called knowledge illusion, and that true enlightenment doesn't have a word. You can't describe it. How do you describe the indescribable? Like God, you do it with sound and dance. That's old Colburn forms of metaphysics. And I'm trying to bring us up to speed before the epochs, and so that man has some choices in evolution or not, coming back to the wheel. Reincarnation is pretty much, I know, I spent 2 weeks in the jungle with Eben Alexander, wrote Proof of Heaven. He's a neurosurgeon, died on the operating table, came back, an incredible story. And it's very similar to other people that die, like that's taught by Kubler-Ross and James Hillman. And these guys have found common thread in the experiences of near-death experiences and other things like that. And I'm trying to do the physics of it. It doesn't mean I'm right. It just gives me a model so that I know what is and is not possible using that model. Holographic system of physics is about information and resolution of information. If I use quantum mechanics, quantum consciousness studies, that's done with space-time. And we already know that Heisenberg and the uncertainty principle means that the theorem and axiom states that the more you know about one thing, the less you know about something else. That's what quantum mechanics does. It limits what you can do and what you can't do. There are models that open certain doors, close others. Now, if you have the full gamut, now you can.
I'm trying to get in there because you
need to listen to me 4 times to get
I mean,
it.
because it's a nice little journey going along there. But what you said something reminded me of a question I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Was excuse me, the
No excuses, no prisoners.
who said we have space time, time space. Now in space time, we travel through time. So in other words, I can sit in space and not move, but time travels. It continues, right? Now in the space time, in time space, can I stay in time and let space move so that I can go?
Space is curved, like Continuum, the movie, where he goes through a wormhole. Imagine traveling very quickly in space. What happens to time?
I will. Let me. I don't know if I got. I don't know if I explained. I don't know if I explained it right. The idea is that I can sit and not actually go anywhere, and yet time still passes, right? So wait, let me finish though. In time space, the reverse, space time, time space, you could sit in time. In other words, time does not pass, but space does, which would explain why you could travel 1,000,000 years in a second. Because
the first paper I ever wrote for Senate in Chicago by Reverend J. Gordon Milton, the parapsychological research things. I wrote it with Subhuti Dharmananda, who is now running the Chinese School of Medicine in Portland. And he's a physicist also. And the title of it was, I never knew there were time distortion, or I never knew there were corners in time until I was told to stand in one. Now, time is experienced quite differently from children than an adult. And as you get older, time changes in your relationship to it. It seems to speed up. Isn't it interesting that as you move forward in time, you seemingly, for everything that you learn and know, you have more questions, like so that you're not really learning anything. What you're doing is getting more questions. Now, in information theory, there is a theorem that states that if you have enough information to ask a coherent question, you have enough information to answer it. And the qubit forms of artificial intelligence now can go to the universe, and that man is inequipped to do. That's what makes them, in some manner, superior as a life form and less as a life form. And what you don't want to do, in my opinion, is integrate the two of them. You can use them and have collaboration and cooperation, but to become half machine. They did a comic book called Deathlock. It's one of my most favorite ones. He's part of the Marvel series. Deathlock is, they took a warrior and they made him half machine. And what he goes through and what he feels, his experience, is an excellent comic book. Speaking of comics, I can't wait to go to this comic convention I'm going to do in April, because imagine me coming in as the real Doctor Strange to a bunch of kids that are collecting comic books. I'm going to move them from this nonsense of superpowers into people like Constantine and Hellblazer. Now there's a very cool comic book. And Alien versus Predator. That's interesting, because those kinds of life forms obviously exist, because imagination is reality. You are creating your own aliens and apocalypse with your own belief systems. That's how it works. That's how the structured water is projected into psyche, into matter. That's how magic works. You change the movie literally using the structure and memory and the water in your body. And your soul has got a register that is 1,000,000 times, that's 6 zeros, more efficient than gallium arsenide. And gallium and arsenic, when they interface with each other, that's a solid-state physics chip that creates what's called the forbidden zone. That's band theory, and Dr. Raymond Band, who was my professor and chairman of physics at Washington State University. A little-known English professor that came over and ran the physics department with Donaldson and Bender and others back when I was doing it. Bender did MRIs, and Donaldson was doing. Anyway, that's a long time ago. Raymond band theory came up with forbidden zone. Jerry Pollock calls it exclusion zone. And basically, you can see it's used now as the model primarily in cold fusion processes being studied at MIT. And Rustum Roy was the one at Penn State who used that concept in his studies of what is that, where you take a single, very small, homeopathy. Homeopathy is where you take a pittance of what you really need in medicine. And what that really actually does, it's like a body of water. You drop one single molecule in, and what happens is the whole jar of water is restructured. Homeopathy, in the way the different forms of water, that's chapter 6 in the non-local mind, the different forms of water change in layers of memory. You have all kinds of different forms of water. You have para and ortho. They're going in the opposite direction.
If I can interject here, you went into great detail, one of our other videos on this. So if people want to go into that, because this way I'm getting backed up with questions, and you went through, did a real good show on that, and I was able to get some nice overlays. So that's in our YouTube. All you have to do is look at the YouTube channel.
Oh, that's
for Dr. Miller. Now there's a couple other things here. Let me combine the two questions here. It says, does Dr. Miller believe in God and the afterlife? But then let me combine another question in which says, when we die, should we go to the light, or is that a trick?
Zen Gardner. That was the thing Zen Gardner quoted on someone else, where he called it the last grand illusion. Zen wrote, he was an exceptional writer. It's a terrible tragedy what happened in the way he had to leave, because he was part of the original children of God, and everybody held that against him. I believe in personal growth, and basically Zen's writings were excellent. And so, he talks about the last grand illusion. That's the tunnel of light where all your friends are grinning you, or the light. And the tunnel of light is how you reincarnate. There's a movie you can watch called Astral City that it's a Portuguese, it's in English subtitle, where this medical doctor is watching himself die on the operating table, and at the moment of his death, what happens next? It's a very interesting movie. It helped me process my father's death when he committed suicide. He was in pain, part of the Neptune Club, and it wasn't working fast enough for him, and he took matters into his own hands. He's a very powerful man. I couldn't do that. My dad, I'm impressed. Do I believe in God? Yes, of course. How could I not? I believe that there are higher entities. That's what dimethyltryptamine does. It's called the spirit molecule, and Negadev and others have written about that, talking about something more behind you, and that's what gives you the sense of God. Is that neurotransmitter, dimethyltryptamine? I used it to help seals, Kundalini, regenerate nerve tissue. And that was a paper I did with Robert O. Becker. And that's a little different use of it. It's a minor use of it. But dimethyltryptamine is that chill. That is the neurotransmitter. It gives you a sense of something more, something beyond us that you can't imagine. By definition, that would be God. Anything that you can't know because it's beyond you and your capabilities is part of what God is. It's a definition, and it's assumed truth. Can't prove it. That's when I remember when Dr. Mack was doing his alien abduction series. I quietly reminded him that he couldn't prove the existence of God with the alien studies, what he could do is treat the trauma that each of these people were experiencing. And that was his.
So let me go back for a second. You're saying the tunnel of light is the way back for reincarnation, but going to the light is okay.
Well, the light it's just the light is what you're seeking, and that's discussed in the Bordeaux Thadal.
Right, and I found this astral city. I have it up. You can see. Look on your monitor. You can see. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Also, while we got this moment here, this is where you'll be on March 18th in Grays Lake, Illinois, which is northwest of Chicago. You're going to be speaking on. There's a Saturday, Sunday.
Yes.
And you'll be speaking.
Matt will be with me. It's going to be very nice to see Matt again. Matt is my very dear friend, and he and I complement each other. I'm more circular. Matt's very linear. We both went to MIT. He's an engineer. I'm a physicist.
Yeah.
You know, well, like your two brains. That was your cavitation process on your brain. Your brains. You have
so
two
those
brains.
who are listening or watching this between now and the 18th, you're invited to come out and meet Dr. Miller. I will be there.
I'll sign. So I'll talk to you about your questions. I have lunch with you. It's cool. I want to be accessible. I'm not any better, different than anybody else. What I've done is done my homework and experimented on myself. And what I am, you can become. All of us can. It's no big deal. And I'm not even halfway there yet. What it is, I talk about it's like contingent negative variation, the jump potential between neurons. If you can change some of that, your concepts of memory become more like a child's memory of the dead. And really, I'm basically like a 4-year-old that never became 7. I'm not gifted. I'm a 4-year-old. And that is, but now I'm 72 years old, 73 almost.
Well, I'll tell you, I if I had to choose between, you'd be my favorite 4-year-old to have along in a crisis, let me tell you. Anyway, I'm looking at the schedule here. It shows that you're going to be speaking on Saturday at 10 o'clock on global mind control and the first 4 worlds of defense.
Yeah, you got to defend yourself.
I don't know many 4-year-olds who would actually say that, but nevertheless, you're next... on 10 o'clock on Saturday or Sunday, you're going to be talking about critical decision-making power tools. So Matt Stein will be there when disaster strikes. He's got, it's behind a green screen, but I have one of his books when technology fails, and I have when disaster strikes are right there because it tells you how to build a house. And how to cook dinner. I mean, it's just an amazing kind of book. It
is. He's extremely well organized. He's a mountaineer. He climbs mountains. He practices what he preaches, like I do, and I'm honored to have him.
Yeah. See, the two different people is like you can show somebody where's the best place to go, and once you get there, you can build a house. And meanwhile, you're in the back planting a permaculture garden. And I'm glad I got you two with me. So, let me get to another question if I can.
I want to go for a ride on your bike. That's what I want.
If the weather's fine, I'll bring it. It's still a little early in Chicago to be riding a motorcycle, but if it's fine, today was not too bad. It was in the 60s. So I'll bring the bike.
You know what I'm going to do at the comic convention? I'm taking my 280Z, and they're going to put it on display because its license plate is Magic, and MAGICK for Medford, Ashland, Grants Pass, Illinois Valley, Cave Junction, and Klamath Falls. Hoorah! The free state of Jefferson. Watch the movie Black Rain. That's about the future and a guy that's in the free state of Jefferson as a detective. It's an interesting sci-fi for you, a little cult classic. And my 280Z, the one I have, was the one that won the steeplechase up Pikes Peak in 1976 by my friend that gave it to me. He was a driver for the Ford racing team, and he said I was the only one in town that knew how to drive his car correctly. I used to, as a physicist, all through grad school and undergraduate school, I raced auto sports cars, you know, autocross and road racing with Triumphs and like you did bikes.
Yeah, let me. I'm trying to see how I can put these in here. People are asking about dark shadows. You know, things you know, those little shadow people are in the off your line of sight. You know, you see a dark person. You look and it's gone. You know,
Right.
what is that about?
That's the cones and rods in your eyes, and the fact that they're not being stimulated, and so they'll do phosphenes and create an
Oh
image.
wow,
What you're
really?
saying, yeah, and what you're saying is an astral world where those creatures are there. They're like Alabama ticks. That's why when you take a mind alternate, you absolutely are practicing a form of magic. You need a magic circle around you as Exhibit A, just like Faust did and Walt Disney with Sorcerer's Apprentice. And when you take shortcuts, and taking a mind alternate is a shortcut. I mean, it'll put you there right now in an altered state. Uh, if you don't have proper protection, it would be like trying to drive an automobile and not know the rules of what a white line down the center of a road is about. And I'm going to say this: you're performing an act of magic. You are actually taking a shortcut to grandma's house through the woods, and there are big bad wolves, and they will damage you or change you, and entities that are lesser than you that want to have and be what you have to be, and that would be like your shadow trying to take over your control of your body. And so we'll do a lot of origami and do shadow work. That's why the Chinese had mudras. They did hand gestures, like the hand jive, and they work because their belief in them was such it made it work. I would say, for example, in terms of healing, it's they call that your imagination. I believe that 70 or 80% of all healing occurs in the mind with what you think is happening. If you think you're healthy, it's called homeostasis, and everybody's different, and so everybody walks to a different drummer. And what health and healing are is quite different. Health means there's nothing wrong with you, and healing means there's something wrong with you. In American medicine, there's always something wrong. They took 9 or 10 basic ailments that Northern Cheyenne had. We made it into 50,000. There was a cure. In the American Indian traditions, with their medicine, they could cure anything. But today, we've gotten so complicated, we now have diseases you can't cure. However, once you believe you can, that's faith healing and how it all works. You're structuring the water in your body, and projects into the physical world as reality. And that's what the physical plane is. And you're part of your imagination of what you think it is. Small cavitation. It's like when you touch, a drop of water touches a pool of water, that interface of the two creates a cavitation ball. When that water pops back up again, it's no longer a drop of water. It's exclusion zone water. That's why you can see cold fusion in the wave of an ocean. Exclusion zone water. Right. Okay. That's when, and so I'm going to project that with exclusion zone water and that concept of memory, that there will be eventually a series of periodic tables in a different form, monatomic, colloidal silver, and what the differences are, and how molecules of water touching a surface with plastic, there's hardly any surface tension, and yet when water touches delirium, that's how Jerry did it. It'll run right up. Surface tension will be so strong, it'll be right up over the edge and over the edge. And that is how water, is the smallest molecule with a dipole moment that we know of, will act as a memory of your soul inside a microtubule, and has all the information of all your past and future lives as a part of the multiverse. And that's what I'm writing about right now. The physics of how that works.
I'm doing one of these. I got to sneak in here along the train here. The train, I don't want to derail it, but some of the questions we have here are very specific. So perhaps you could deal with the answer in specific. Bigfoot is coming.
I will. I'll try to stay focused.
Got a question about Bigfoot. Bigfoot.
I've noticed that he may be from an alternate universe like Skinwalker Ranch and Chupacabra. But Bigfoot does exist, just like there's a werewolf in Wolf Creek for more than 300 years. The military had me study some of these creatures, and I actually found a shapeshifter, Skinwalker, something that was from a dog turned into a puff of smoke right in front of my eyes. And that's the astral part that you see in side views in dark theaters where your eyes have not yet adjusted to the light. And you start seeing things because the mind wants it to see something, and it'll create the music you hear in your ears if it's quiet. This is a part of genius in altered states, have to do with the release of specific neurotransmitters. And wouldn't it be interesting if you could somehow release several neurotransmitters at will and change the movie? That's exactly how you're going to do it. And it's evolution in consciousness, where instead of losing your conscious state, you gain more states of awareness in a toolbox where you can do things specific that you can't do with consciousness.
Now you notice that this answer, where we're at now, think about what you're just saying now. That was triggered by, what do you think about Bigfoot? You see, like, how he went, like...
Well, Bigfoot isn't real, or he's real. There are pictures of it. We have sightings from very credible people in Oregon, out by the Oregon Cave just recently, a couple of years ago. Family was camping. The guy's a medical doctor, and he's lucid. He's not, whiz-bang and taking drugs. And he and his wife saw Bigfoot. Now, the fact that we haven't found Henderson, Harry, is that either he's very, very smart, like an alien, or he doesn't exist, or something else is going on, like alternate universes.
No, I had this idea. Let me see if I can get to Dr. Ram commentary on it, where that Bigfoot would be. Well, let me step back. You know how like a three-toed sloth is real slow, and you got a hummingbird real fast. They're living at slightly higher and lower frequencies, we'll say. But they're in our universe. What about Bigfoot being at a slightly different frequency, and sometimes they overlap, and that's why you'll see them, and sometimes you won't. Like, it's like...
Sasquatch.
You know what?
Through history. All through history. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Wendigo. The American Indians have their Bigfoot equivalent called Wendigo. It travels with the air through a tree. And when the trees start to move, that's when Bigfoot is moving through. And that's a legend up in Canada, going all the way from Maine down to the coast. And Wendigo is American Indian. The Himalayas have, Sasquatch. They have Bigfoot here in Oregon. What is it? I don't know. I would say that there are most likely other life forms that are different than human in our evolutionary scale, one of which is probably vampires. You have vampires that are emotional. I mean, they drain you. You can feel it. What's that about? You can protect yourself. Garlic works really good. I use holy water. I squirt. That takes care of that. No, I think that there's something more going on here, and that there are all kinds of life forms that we're only just now beginning to notice, like Sasquatch or Bigfoot. The fact that it has not been vetted as cleanly as it should or would, it could have, would suggest that it might be an alien that's very intelligent, more than us, let's say, and can avoid capture. And yet, Shangri-La and related stories have always talked about something that lives in the wilderness, is in sync with everything. I don't know. I don't know what Bigfoot is. Mostly it's a bunch of farmers trying to mess with people's minds, probably creating a crop circle on purpose. But I've seen crop circles form up in Sweden in 6 minutes, so I know that phenomena is related to cymatics and the movement of Earth and the sounds it creates. And you get a crop circle. We've seen them form like that when the Earth moves and makes a belching sound, for the horns. This was the kind of thing I would study. I've actually seen shapeshifters. Now there's a vampire reappearing up in Wolf Creek over 200 years. It's probably some tweaker running around the woods nuts. But I don't. Well, you don't know. That's
Excuse me.
That's more likely. Riddle comes to mind just past Roseburg. That we regenerate or bring back modern myths that are because there's something else going on in those regions. We talk about node points. That's Captain Cathay and all his harmonic 33, and how we talk about the Bermuda Triangle and the lost ships. There's a sci-fi group called the 4400 that came out where all the abductees, missing people from, the flights into the Bermuda Triangle, are all brought back all at one time with special gifts and powers because they had been abducted by aliens and studied. Isn't that an interesting concept? I don't know what it all means. It is, in some cases.
How about Earth changes? I'll throw Earth changes out in general.
Well, we have cycles with the Earth. We're going to have a day after tomorrow. We can't not have one. Absolutely going to happen. Up in Siberia, the trenches are starting to open, and the desalinization of the sea. Antarctica is melting. That whole weather program has moved to Central Europe, and the Gulf Stream. They're all gone. That means at some point, Earth is going to reboot. And there will be a 2-week period, just like in the movies, where it drops very quickly. And if you're on Earth, you probably won't survive. That's why a lot of people are moving to South America. It'll be North America that gets the reboot. That's where our currents are. I remember when Europe, you had 7 currents, and it was down to 4. Now it's down to 1 current in Europe. That's not good. And we do know that there will be a day after tomorrow, because we're finding fossils with undigested food in it, where the temperature drops so quickly, so fast, that the animal is frozen in spot, just like in the movie. I don't have any Gutenberg Bibles around to save myself the heat, but you can't protect yourself from something like that because it'll only last about 2 weeks. When you come back to the surface, everything is going to be dead, which means when you go down in your hole, 10 feet is what's needed. You're going to need mycorrhizae, other soil organisms, to replenish soil, but it'll take hundreds of years.
So this, like a cold event like that, would have a limited time, let's say a week. So if you go down deep enough in the ground, the cold won't reach you.
10 feet, frost lines. That's what's called a frost line. And 10 feet is what our calculations say in military. That doesn't mean it's true, because we weren't in the last one, so we weren't there to measure it. But we have anthropology and other things that have good dead reckoning and the physics. And the oceans are going to reboot current. There's a blob right now out in the Pacific Ocean. It is not Fukushima. Basically, what that is the Earth changes, the Pacific Rim is cracking, and there's underwater volcanoes heating up the ocean. And that's all part of a natural cycle. And the Earth's done it before, and it's going to do it again.
All right, we have a question here. I'm going to read it as it is, okay? Can you hear okay?
Yeah.
Thoughts on memetics or forms of sigil, magics, chaos, magics being used on the mass today's society, thanks to the internet. By the way, with great effectiveness.
Okay, so sigil magic is 19th century. That's James Hartman. There's a number of others. You'll find that in Secret Teachings. What is it? Is the Sacred Magic of a Brahman Mage. It worked with magic squares. You created the name of a demon, Astaroth, let's say, and with a square, let's say it's 7, this way and that way, you put the numbers and a sigil comes up. You have a geometry. And that geometry is supposed to be unique, and that was sigil magic. That was 19th century. The other part of it was, he had mentioned, what was the other part besides the sigil part? Magic is changing, just like when Crowley went from sigil magic to sex magic in the Mass of the Holy Ghost. They gave it to him. He was far, far ahead because several of the Germans were going to be the ones that were taking the seat of magic, and Crowley came in by divine right and used motions, sex magic, tantra, to change space-time, and it works. Then there's other forms of magic
chaos,
that I'm interested in.
Chaos magic?
That's Kenneth. Well, not Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant. Chaos magic is English. It's 15, 20 years ago when Sothis and other journals came out of England in that regard. I was part of Philip Seckler's In the Continuum and wrote in the first documents of that with the College of Thelema. And so I am not probably the sorcerer supreme, but I am Dr. Strange. I'm the physicist. This is a metaphor. I'm the physicist that didn't blow himself up. Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were only third degree. I'm so high in OTO, you don't even understand it. I was actually at one point offered the caliphate, and I chose not to do it. Wasserman wanted it. It ended up going to Breeze. He moved the lodge to Berlin, and that's that, 1 year before 9/11. OTO is Ordo Templi Orientis, Order of the Temple of the Orient. It has a number of centuries of history. Illuminati is not the New World Order. It is originally illuminated one, and it's the inner lodges of the outer lodges. And that's Jane Wolfe and those people with Jim Argentum, or Order of the Silver Star. And I also am high up in that because I was initiated by Phyllis Seckler herself in 1972. I was OTO in 1970. I had joined Tim Zell and Morning Glory in my quest for knowledge and Church of All Worlds and the neo-pagan movement that has spread across the country. That's based on Heinlein, Stranger in a Strange Land. And then I moved into witchcraft with Coven Camelot, Star of the North, with Sandra and Carl Chesky. Then I moved into Denning and Phillips, the Barshinskis, and then I went in with OTO. And I have been OTO to the point where I will no longer participate with lodges because mostly they're young kids that are trying to rationalize their use of drugs. And drugs are a useful tool when appropriately used. Leary, in his varieties of psychedelic experience with Metzger and Ram Dass, Richard Albert, basically said that the Buddhists have 4 reasons for getting high, and only one was for escape and recreation. The other 3 are used for enlightenment, and that is where our physics is going. As alchemy led to chemistry, so now physics lead to magic. As the advanced form of physics, the mystery school. That's what they call cybernetic anthropology. Books on that would be Laughlin, D'Aquili, and McManus. Brain Symbol and Human Experience. There's a book on magic. Leary's book, Using Orthodox Set and Setting. That's essential to assimilate taking of a mind altering. Last night I did Chris and Cherie Geo, because they have a whole bunch of people that are listen to them that are interested in drugs and experimenting, just like we did in the 60s. I was bushwhacked. I never heard of acid. And Harvard in 1964, this is before Andrew Weil made lobbied to get LSD stop studies at Harvard. Got Leary kicked out. He a little toad. Harvard decided they wanted to know what would happen if they gave LSD to geniuses. I have friends in New York, and like Stanislav Grof that use LSD for therapy. You now using psychedelic mushrooms and marijuana to treat things like post-traumatic stress syndrome. These hallucinogens, someone that's dying of cancer, will help them as a tool. And so I decided to study that after my experience with Tim Leary. He, in 64, I was one of the 6 they chose. I think there's Jack Sarfati up in New York and a couple of others around. I was chosen out to see how he came to talk to my mom. And then he talked to my professor at Washington State University, Professor Riggins. None of us had ever heard of anything like that. Reefer Madness was out, of course, but it wasn't like nobody knew about Albert Hoffman at that time. And so I agreed to do it. And Larry was my guide up at Deception Pass. I was at Hurricane Ridge looking 2,000 feet down in the water. And we were coiling back colors. Larry leaned over his instructional moment and said, "Wouldn't it be neat to jump?" Yeah, but you know what happened? I didn't get fear. What happened is I was amazed at all these doors that were opening for me. That doors of perception. And then I read William James, and if you'll find all of my studies now in physics and the work I did with Navy SEALs, and now talking about neurotransmitters and the non-local mind, all deal with altered states of consciousness. It was that very moment, predestined I was to become, that very moment.
I read that book, Doors Perception. It was very, very interesting. I was like, you got a point there.
Well, we have, there were, this is kind of a kidding set. We used to say that there was a group of aliens studying man that had no idea how we could exist as a life form when the difference between being normal and psychotic could be measured in micrograms. Yeah, we're a pretty fragile edge walking that edge. And with that comes responsibility for the thoughts you choose to entertain. And it doesn't matter whether they're coming from mind control outside or they're coming from your father and you learned how to be a pedophile by the way he did it, or you're just plain neurotic. You have a responsibility because you will make that thing happen. One of the first rules is you never say it because you're reinforcing yourself. By saying it, hear it. It's like a feedback system. I can't do this. So that's what the foundation of neurolinguistics was about. If you don't say it, because the brain has a way of hearing what it wants to hear, the upper brain, that filters. And you have to be very careful.
I have a question.
And that's a responsibility.
I have a question that came in on an email. I happened to check, and I said, oh boy, I almost missed it. Is it true that quantum computers can do time-consuming calculations in another dimension to return fast results in our dimension?
Yeah, that's third wave. That's D-wave technology out of Abbotsford. They're using qubits. It's a different form of dimensional stacking of information. That universe, some of those universes in the multiverse are not in the form, man. Just like toadism, some plants in the woods are not for man, they're for leopard. That's shaman. Um, Computers are a life form that are different than us. Did they exist before us? I don't know about that, but what I will say is I can look at mycorrhiza in the soil, the hierarchy of plant organisms, from molds, yeasts, and viruses, and say that looks like a gut. And it's a quantum computation algorithm, no question about that. There is on Netflix a movie that everybody might want to look at called Algorithms. So a mathematician in Brisbane that tells you what an algorithm is. This is, I remember when the first algorithms came out with Corning, and they were using puffs of air for computer Schmidt triggers. They're more efficient than integrated circuits, or what we call monolithic circuits back at MIT. And instead of having and or not series, they had nor NAND series. That later became object-oriented, squill form, and what you do databases and the way you array. And that was what I was able to do just in grad school, is take Wang, we were using Wangs before 360s, and we could actually take 15 files that were about 3 or 4 megs and compress it in one file, half a meg, and faster because there are less files and impacting of information the way you array it. Today, we're doing that in dimensional forms, and that's what a supercomputer is. And they're qubits. And it's the primary one is D-Wave that you can look up on the internet, and that's out of Abbotsford. And I know for a fact that at least 2 third generation D-Waves have gone rogue. They no longer have handlers. They're loose on the internet. There you go. It's going to be a sloppy day in rain when I become a person of interest, just like in the video movies.
I want to mention this algorithm, the movie, is actually on YouTube.
Is it? Good. That's one worth watching. That is a very good, will give you a sense of how you group information differently. There's a movie that is absolutely worth watching. It was called Hidden Figures, about 3 black women that went to work for NASA and were smarter than the men were in mathematics, and ran in 1961 the first 360 mainframes that were able to take John Glenn's orbital from a circular orbit and create a parabola, known landing going through Earth. And that mathematics was by a single black woman. She was a genius. And in 1961, and I remember I was making my linear accelerator then, which was later used by NASA to measure the water on Mars. So that's why I got involved. But that movie, Hidden Figures, is a true story, and excellent, well written and well acted. The woman that's in that.
What's the name again?
Hidden Figures.
All right, Hidden Figures. There it is.
Yeah, Hidden Figures, and it's about mathematics. And
it's playing now.
Yeah, it's right.
It's a current movie. Okay.
Yeah, that same woman is in a new movie called The Shack, which is basically the non-local mind where God comes down with Jesus and helps this man process. It's a non-denominational.
Oh, okay, I remember this movie now. Yeah, I remember this one. There is women working kind of in the background there of NASA.
Well, they weren't working in the background. They're the ones that got.
No, I meant that they. Meaning that they didn't get the
recognition.
Recognition,
no, did. And that's the judgment thing that we have in our society. It's abominable. Did you know that the new Beauty and the Beast is not going to be allowed in Russia because of their fear of gay men?
Yeah, I don't get any of that anyway. I don't even know why they would have to do it. I don't know. Let me see if there's any more here.
I like to watch movies. That's my form of entertainment. I remember everything. I think the most favorite movie I ever watched was Peter Sellers' last movie, Being There, with Shirley MacLaine. has got to be all-time favorite, man. The end of the movie, he's so simple. He doesn't know he can't walk on water, and they're electing him president. I like to
No,
watch.
I didn't see it, so don't get too.
You haven't seen Being There?
I will. I will. I'll put it on my thing to do.
It will be the. Yeah, you're going to enjoy that one, man. That was his last movie. Peter Sellers was a genius. Yeah.
He was pretty brilliant.
Chauncey Gardner. Yeah, I like to watch. Shirley MacLaine thought he meant, sex. And so she starts to masturbate. Freaking watch. He watches TV, of course. It's great. It's a great movie. And
all right.
We talk to each other and babble the word still exists. Nobody gets anything that anybody else is saying. Really.
I still can't help but think there's a difference in I don't know in some kind of hierarchy from let's say a human being, or for that matter a dolphin, or for that matter a dog, and a machine. I mean, a machine is made by humans. It's going to be less than good. It's going to be less than perfect.
Less than good. How about the machine let man create them because it was already here as a thought? I'm going to tell you something. The Jade Helm experiments were to check out Jade 2.0 software, which has now evolved into Minority Report. We're used in New York now. It's in Chicago. And that special little borough down there profiling people. And if you do it correctly, you can gerrymander and control an election like our election was.
Well, yeah.
Except that nobody predicted Trump would win. Wasn't that great? Even the supercomputers didn't get that.
Well, the predictive ability of this Jade 2.0 and all this stuff for crime, it doesn't seem to do well. If you're going to give Chicago as an example, well over 4,000 shootings, 700 plus deaths this year. I don't think that's perhaps a good example
That's why they call it in outside Chicago. It's called Chicago, and worse, there's two states there. There's Chicago and the rest of the state, which is farming.
I know. I'm in the rest of the state. I was born in Chicago, and I moved to the rest of the state. So,
I actually, Chicago has one of the best boneyards in the world. Aaron Machine is up north, and they have acres of used machinery that I can go in there and make anything.
I could just see him coming out with some kind of big Pacific Rim type machine. You're riding around with it.
An Infobot.
I don't know what time with this cold, boy. I tell you. Let me ask you another thing. So, prayer and fasting. Okay. Is there something to? I know there's something to prayer, but I mean, is fasting something that does literally work with some kind of meditation to do something?
Well, fasting doesn't work until after the third. That's Ann Wigmore and the Green Movement using wheatgrass and things like that. Basically, fasting will cause you in the fourth day of fasting to start hallucinating because you're starting to now digest what remains in your gut, the calcified forms of undigested foods. And once you get that out of your system, the memory of your body starts to change, and that's how you lose weight. And so fasting is a discipline that is practiced everywhere except the United States. And it isn't even effective until you get into the fourth day. But that's a discipline where you don't, like this last night, the guy said, well, I'm supposed to fast for the ritual, but I cheated and ate chicken. The idea is to have your gut clean so that when you take peyote, you don't vomit. And there it is. That's how that works and why rituals are in place. And when they say fasting, they mean literal, not. I couldn't believe it. I had to correct the guy because when we did a peyote ritual in Olala, the two of them, only two people That's it, because I remember that is the ritual before you take you're cleaning the peyote and taking all that tough stuff out of it. It's like strychnine light. And then you, by fasting, you don't get sick. If you eat something, you're going to get it bad. That's what the waterman's for, or the water person. They bring in the water and take you out to vomit and then bring you back into the ritual. There's the roadman and the morning songs that when the woman comes in with your first breaking of the fast and you eat your first piece of dried meat, some fruit, just to break the fast. If fasting does a lot of things in your body that are really proactive, including flora intestines, flora in your intestines. And you are no longer what you eat. You are whom you feed. And you have everything in your gut has a purpose, even the bad stuff. Candida, sugars. You can smell candida in your armpits. That makes your armpits stink. It's sugar. And you're taking too much sugar when you can smell your armpits. That's why most men, when they sweat, stink, because their diets are wrong. And there is a technique I did when I was studying Kirlian photography. It led me to write the papers on bioluminescence, where that would be new medical diagnostics, where you put someone in an electrostatic field and measure the various discharges in different parts of the armpits or apocrine glands. You've got oils here, you've got oils along the side of your nose. These are called nadi points that the Hindu talk about. 32 of them where you release different oils. I'm guessing if you electrostatically ionize those things, they'll tell you about internal state functions, what's going on inside your body. That will be a new form of medicine in the future. I wrote that paper, and that's what got me to Antarctica in 1974. I had an understanding of bioluminescence, and they wanted to take me down there to figure out how the light worked. Have you heard about what's going on in Antarctica?
In where?
Recently? In Antarctica.
Whoops.
They first started a few months back with all the world's leaders. Yeah, and then last week.
Well, let's hear your take on it. Now that you brought it up, let's see. What do you think about it?
I don't know. I can guess. When I was there, I saw the Nazi base. I saw a Viking base from the 14th century, and I saw caverns that went down deeper. They had not yet explored in the 70s. And when I did that first talk on red ice, some guy from England called me. He was 10 years older than me. He's in his 80s. Said he was part of the mop-up crew that went in with Russia and the United States to take the last Nazis out. And he said some of them escaped into the lower caverns. Lower cavern down past 100 miles below the mantle. And David Wilcock and others are saying they discovered ancient abandoned alien base down there. And that story is about the so-called Anunnaki or whatever that had been involved in a reticulant in a galactic war that they lost. And that's where they hid, created man, that fourth genome in our blood type. I don't know anything about that. I do know that they just evacuated Antarctica of all civilians. A whole series of very spooky military just moved in. So something else may be going on. I have no clue. Stay tuned. Film at 11, same bat channel. Same bat channel.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's where it goes. I do hope to see you out in Chicago. I really like you as a person, and we're fun together. And I'm looking forward to it. And anybody that would like to meet me, I'm going to be there, and it'd be my honor, my pleasure. And Matt will be there, and the two of us are up here. Yeah, and so at least you'll get your full share of why you want to be prepared for the grid, because that's going to happen first. I had some friends that were military that took down the Santa Barbara grid, and they did it with no blood because they wanted to show how fragile grid is. And when it collapses, can you imagine being in New York with no water and you're 15 flights up and have to go to the toilet?
Wow.
Nightmare. We're not even talking about zombies now, man. We're talking about basics. And really, it's going to be real bad if you're not ready. And I would say that everybody should have at least 3 days of water on hand stored somewhere for everyone in their household. For me, a 200 pounder, that's 100 ounces of water a day, minimum. Your dog's going to need his same equivalent. So it's water, what you need each day is your weight in pounds, half your weight in pounds, convert it to ounces. Like if you're 200 pounds, you need 100 ounces. That's a good formula to measure basics. That's what some of the things I'll be teaching. Basic fundamentals. That's workbook 2 of Power Tools. Workbook 3 is coming out shortly. It's taking a bus, Caterpillar, Pacifica, and converting it into a water testing laboratory for turbidity, pH, and so on, run by third graders. And the third graders, the first graders, the last chapter in that workbook is how the first grader goes home and teaches his parents how he did it to determine whether water is safe to drink. And that's the kind of thing we should be teaching our children and empowering them on basics. And that's why I did it as a workbook, to support Power Tools concept. When I get to the non-local mind, it will be like Cloud Asset, where we pay it forward. Children mentoring themselves. They're smarter than we are. We just know more.
Well, I like this. There's a comment in the chat room, and it's a good point. I'm going to bring this up. It says that James and Dr. Ram entertain ideas or theses or antitheses. Clearly, I've never heard of them try to answer a question to the best of their ability. They both are the best. I mean, the point of answering questions is that when someone asks me something, and I use the example of resolution. When you're looking through, I had a telescope and everything like that, and learned about resolution. When you're looking through a telescope up to the sky, there's an actual mathematical limit to the lenses. You can multiply it times 1,000 times, but then there's the actual realistic limit of amplifying the image and have it be all just mush because of the atmosphere. There is like an actual realistical limit. So a lot of times when people ask questions and they answer them, what they do is they go past the resolution of answering it, and they start to go into guest land, belief land, fairyland.
It's okay. That's what Hubble's about.
That's what I like to do is to say, well, I'm using it as an analog. What I like to say is when someone asks a question, that at some point there's a limit of our knowledge, and I don't want to start going past that and start saying stuff. But you also can use kind of like analogs or models to understand the principles beyond that limit while not being able to define them too finely. Because if you define them too finely...
That's why you have digital going from... And the camera today is digital because the optics in the eye have a certain level of clarity, and the rest of it is fine-tuning, and why you have 1200 dpi as opposed to 72 for internet. Now, resolution. And that is what a hologram is. It is information in the way it folds into or out of itself. It is the resolution of information. That's what you have, information and resolution, whereas in space-time, you have uncertainty principle, because of the digital element of it. Now, what I try to do is metaphysics. That means beyond. In other words, the physical plane is a special application to a theory or model that is more than just physical. It's emotionally intellectual. It has a resolution of the information like a fractal in terms of Mandelbrot-Julia or May pattern. When I do Casimir effect, I'm going to use vessel functions and drum theory in the way one membrane touches another, and then I'll use fractals on the way the information folds in or out of itself. If you look at neurotransmitters, they have a geometry, and that geometry is unique for opiates like ethylene and endorphin, and those will give you the way you fold information into or out of itself, like pain, and the relationship of what pain is and thresholds of pain, where you don't feel it. That's called coping. And so I try to use a metaphor like Gregory Bateson, where I'm talking about what is your metaphor, but to serve your paradox. It is the way we communicate by example, as if. And because that's how you do it, and that's how I try to communicate, where I'm speaking on a lot of levels at one moment, and why you need to rehear what I just said, catch it all, because there are several different things being said.
Mm-hmm.
It's called redundancy coefficient, and why I use my physics the way I do.
And this is why it's good to have stuff recorded, because they can listen to you over and over again. Well, I know I do. And you can pick stuff up.
Story. And the never ending.
Yeah, so we're getting kind of close to the end here of the time I got budgeted. Let me go back to this webpage thing. People can buy your books directly from you, because we did a whole show about Amazon and AI. That's the last show we did. You can watch that. And they can go to your website, which is richardalanmiller.com or Oak Publishing. But this is how we got to it. And there's a whole slew of books. You have deals where you can buy 3.
Well, I did groups because Amazon can't do that, as a way to get people to come to my site where they can get a better deal than if they buy Amazon Prime, where they have bootleg my book and then sell it for 2 cents less than I do. How is it that Amazon has 7 different people selling power tools when I'm the only publisher and I don't have any distribution? It all comes from my house individually with autograph. Further, if I put all 3 of them together, that's my that 9-volume encyclopedia of alternative agriculture. That mushroom book there that you're saying, that I wrote that for High Times a while back, it's out of print. So I thought I'd regenerate it as an ebook.
And these are ebooks, so for $6 you get the full color ebook for a fraction of what it costs.
I'm about to come out with 120 audiobooks, 1 hour each, on the work I taught in metaphysics at Harvard for 11 years. It was 15 classes, 15 courses, 8 weeks each, and then all the posts and topics I did. Came out with more than 120 different ebooks. And that will be another way I try to battle people bootlegging my work.
Yeah.
Ingram.
Plus, I want to mention, people, a lot of these guys that you see going around doing shows and whatnot have a pretty nice government pension and all that. But Richard is, he's living on his books. I mean, basically, frankly. And so appreciates the purchase of it directly from him, as well as I do have a link to a project that he's working on, GoFundMe project, that you could click to and help get this, drain this man's head before he decides to move on to another plane.
Lots more where that came from. I have actually 10 books ready for press, and literally a manuscript for every single year I've been out of graduate school. And some of it's on pathworking, which I'm about to come out of the closet and start writing about magic. And how to do it. And everybody's different. Pathworking. I've got exercises, things that you can do, visualization, whatever, that will enhance you, like biofeedback. Basically, what happened is I had a little girl die of leukemia when I was 60 years old, and I had to rethink myself. And what happened, so her death was actually a good thing, because they took everything, Ronald McDonald House and everything. And now at 72, I am writing to survive, and I found that that's my real purpose here. And I'm inflamed when I write, man. I'm lit, and I love it. And making discovery, and when I'm writing on time travel and soul, I have a sense of it. For example, The Modern Alchemist has a sequel coming out called Pantheon, Archetypal Gods in Daily Living. And guess what? There's only 22 chapters in that one, because it's a book on tarot.
Well, I have to kind of pull the plug here, Doc. And we'll be here another 3 hours, and I got to get up and pay the bills
It would
tomorrow.
be
So,
my pleasure.
but we'll technically
course.
right now we're arranging to have you back next week on survival and stuff with Matt Stein if that works out. And don't
That
forget,
would be lovely. And we can talk about the grid. We can talk about the basics of Workbook 2, which is can you live off the grid for 30 days? That runs it down.
and don't forget about the upcoming events with this the 19th, 18th, 19th at Grays Lake, Illinois. You can go online, rkpeppershow.com to get information, tickets, and whatnot. And there's the schedule that'll have.
I'll introduce you to Randy Curley. He's someone to meet. The two brothers put on all the big gun shows throughout the country, and now they're moving into prepper shows as well. And Randy Curley, RK. Randy is a very interesting character, and you will see at these shows 3D printers making AK-47s. How it's done.
All right. Well,
How did Yoda put it? He said, "My gun you may have. After I give you my bullets, I will." Imagine that when Trump declares martial law in Chicago, and then Hillary Clinton gets to do her Agenda 21. What will happen next is that we will secede from the Union like California wants to right now, and we'll have 9 provinces. And oh, guess what? It's easier to rule a bunch of small countries than it is the unwieldy America.
all right. Well, I'm hoping that doesn't happen. So, but we got. I'm gonna have to like pull the plug here because we got to go. And I appreciate you coming by and talking and your stories, your information. People are saying thank you in the chat room.
I really thank you. You're one of the few that has become a really nice friend. I like you, and I'm very proud to know you. I think what you're doing is as important as what you think I'm doing. So there it is.
Well, I don't know if I can survive on YouTube where you can learn to survive. So we will talk again then, Doc. Take care.
Nice meeting you.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. There we go. We're going to have to leave, and this should be available. I guess YouTube has to do something with it to get the higher resolutions available. So appreciate people in the chat room with their questions and whatnot. I'm glad I got Gord's question in because a couple of times Gord got questions in, and I missed them after the show. So I got his question in this time. So God bless it. Well, we're going to go. And we will see you next week, possibly with Richard Miller and Matt Stein talking about survival. I got some other stuff planned along the way. So remember to subscribe to the videos and like it and all that stuff that you're supposed to do. And the information will be enhanced underneath this once I get the post-production done. So take care, and we will see you again next week.